millionaire elderly woman falls into frozen lake. But a homeless boy appears and Eleanor Sullivan woke up that July morning with the same emptiness that had been following her for months. The 67-year-old businesswoman had built a textile empire in Aspen, but now she felt like a stranger in her own life. The thin ice-covering Mirror Lake was more fragile than it appeared when Eleanor stepped near the edge during her morning walk. A sharp crack echoed through the frigid air before the surface gave way completely, swallowing her cries for help, along with her trembling body in the freezing water. Tommy was curled up under cardboard near the bridge when he heard the noise. The 15-year-old boy had spent yet another sleepless night protecting Buddy, his scrappy little mutt whose cough was getting worse. Without hesitation, he dropped everything and ran toward the screams. "Ma'am, grab my hand!" Tommy shouted, stretching his arm over the unstable ice. Eleanor flailed desperately, feeling her strength drain with every second in the icy water. Her heavy jewelry dragged her down, and her vision began to darken when she felt a firm hand grip her wrist. "I'll get you out. Don't let go," the boy ordered, using all his strength to pull her. With precise movements, Tommy managed to drag Eleanor out of the lake. She was pale, shaking uncontrollably, and her expensive clothes were now soaked rags clinging to her frail body. "Are you okay? Can you hear me?" Tommy asked, taking off his own tattered coat and draping it over her shoulders. Eleanor looked at the young face before her. Even in her dazed state, she saw something in the boy's brown eyes she hadn't seen in years, genuine concern. There was no calculation, no ulterior motive, no pretense, just a skinny kid in torn clothes offering the little he had to warm her. "My God, you saved me," Eleanor whispered, still trembling. "We gotta get out of here quick. You need to warm up," Tommy said, helping her stand. "What's your name?" Eleanor asked, gripping the boy's arm to steady herself. "Tommy, and you shouldn't be walking alone out here, especially in this cold." Eleanor watched as the boy helped her walk. His clothes were old and patched, but he moved with determination and care. A hoarse cough from the direction of the bridge caught her attention. "That's Buddy, my dog. He's sick," Tommy explained, glancing worriedly toward where he'd left the animal. "You live here?" Eleanor asked, still processing what had happened. "We get by. Buddy and me, we always get by." The simplicity of his answer struck Eleanor in a way she hadn't expected. As they walked, she noticed how Tommy made sure she didn't slip, how he checked if she could keep up, how his eyes held a maturity that didn't match his age. "Let me call someone to take you to the hospital," Tommy suggested as they neared the main street. No need. I live nearby," Eleanor replied, still clutching the boy's coat. "But let me repay you for what you did. You saved my life." Tommy shook his head. "Don't need nothing, ma'am. Just glad you're okay." "What do you mean? You risked yourself in that freezing water for me." "Anyone would have done the same," Tommy said with a shrug. Eleanor stared at the boy in surprise. In her world, no one did anything without expecting something in return. Her own children only showed up when they needed money or wanted to make sure she wasn't changing her will. "At least let me take care of your dog. You said he's sick." Tommy's eyes lit up for a moment, but then he hesitated. "You don't even know me. You don't need to worry about us." "And you didn't know me either when you jumped in to save me," Eleanor replied with a weak smile. Tommy looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to decipher her intentions. Eleanor saw in the boy's face a distrust that seemed to come from bad experiences with adults. "All right," he finally agreed, "but only if it's really to help Buddy." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 2 days later, Eleanor returned to the park with a bag full of veterinary medicine. She had consulted her private vet and explained the symptoms Tommy had described. She found the boy in the same spot, under the bridge, with Buddy curled up beside him. "I brought the medicine," Eleanor said, approaching slowly. Tommy stood up quickly, wiping his hands on his pants before taking the bag. "You didn't have to," he began, but his voice faltered when he saw the amount of medication and special food Eleanor had brought. The vet said, "With this medicine, your Buddy will be better in 2 weeks." Tommy held the bag as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. Eleanor noticed the boy's hands trembling slightly, not from cold but from emotion. "Thank you so much, Miss Eleanor," Really? How do you know my name? Eleanor asked, surprised. I saw it in the news after what happened at the lake. They said the owner of Sullivan Textiles had been in an accident. Eleanor felt a tightness in her chest. The news had reported the accident, but no outlet had mentioned Tommy. As always, only her version of the story mattered to the media. And they didn't talk about you, Eleanor observed. Better that way, I don't like attention. Eleanor sat on a nearby rock, watching Tommy give Buddy his first dose of medicine. The care with which the boy treated the animal, the patience he had to get the dog to swallow the pill, the tender way he spoke to him. All of it stirred something in Eleanor that she had forgotten existed. Tommy, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you save a stranger? You could have gotten hurt. Tommy stopped what he was doing and looked at her. You looked really alone out there, and I don't know, no one deserves to go through that without someone to help. The simple answer hit Eleanor like a punch to the gut. She really had been alone. For years, she'd felt alone, even surrounded by staff, advisors, and self-serving children. Do you have family? Eleanor asked. I have Buddy, Tommy replied, stroking the dog's head. And your parents? Tommy's face closed off instantly. I don't have family anymore, just Buddy. Eleanor realized she'd touched on a sensitive subject and didn't press further. She knew all too well how painful it was to talk about loss. Where did you learn to be so brave? I don't know if I'm brave. I think you just do what you have to when you see someone who needs help. Eleanor fell silent, watching the boy care for his sick dog. There was something about Tommy that deeply intrigued her. It wasn't just the courage he'd shown in saving her, but the way he faced life, how he found purpose even in such difficult circumstances. Tommy, would you like to come to my house? You could take a hot shower, have a decent meal. Thanks, but I can't leave Buddy alone. And big houses make me uncomfortable. Why? I lived in a big house once. It didn't work out. The sadness in the boy's voice made Eleanor want to know more, but she respected the boundary he'd set. Then I'll come back tomorrow to check on Buddy. You don't have to worry about us. I want to worry, Eleanor said, surprising herself with the honesty of her answer. That night, Eleanor barely slept. She couldn't stop thinking about the boy under the bridge, caring for a sick dog with so much love and dedication. She also thought about her own children, Richard and Catherine, who during their last visit had spent 2 hours talking about her need to hire more security and reconsider her investments. The next morning, Eleanor woke up with an energy she hadn't felt in months. She packed a bag with food, blankets, and warm clothes. Her driver, Mr. Jenkins, offered to go with her, but she preferred to go alone. When she arrived at the park, she found Tommy playing with Buddy, who already seemed livelier. The medicine is working, Tommy said, smiling in a way that lit up his whole face. That's wonderful, Eleanor replied, feeling genuine joy for the first time in ages. Do you want to play with him? Buddy likes kind people. Eleanor knelt on the damp grass, something she'd never do in her expensive clothes, and began petting the dog. Buddy licked her hand, and she laughed so spontaneously it surprised even her. He likes you, Tommy observed. How can you tell? Buddy only licks people he thinks have a good heart. Eleanor looked at the boy, moved by the simplicity of his words. And has he licked many people? Not many. He's pretty smart about choosing. They spent the whole morning talking. Eleanor learned that Tommy knew a lot about plants, had taught himself to fix broken things, and dreamed of having a small house with a yard where Buddy could run. Never a big house? Eleanor asked. Big houses come with big problems. A small house with love is better than a big house with sadness. The boy's observation left her thoughtful. Her 15-bedroom mansion really did feel more like a mausoleum than a home. When Eleanor returned that afternoon, she found Richard, her eldest son, waiting in the living room. "Mom, we need to talk," Richard said, not even standing to greet her. "About what?" "About these strange outings of yours. Jenkins told me you've been going to the park every day." Eleanor felt immediate irritation. "Since when do you track my schedule?" "Since you started acting different. Mom, you nearly drowned in that lake. Maybe it's time to reconsider all this independence." Independence? Richard, I'm only 67, not a child. But you're acting like one. What's this about chatting with street kids? Eleanor felt her blood boil. How did you know about that? Aspen is a small town, Mom. People talk. And from what I've heard, you've taken quite an interest in this boy. That boy saved my life, Richard. He has a name, Tommy. And what do you really know about him? His family. Mom, these street kids are trained to take advantage of people like you. People like me. Elderly, wealthy, and vulnerable. The coldness in Richard's voice cut deep. Vulnerable, she repeated, disbelieving. Mom, you've been struggling since Dad passed. It's natural you'd seek connections in the wrong places. Wrong places. Richard, that boy showed more humanity in 5 minutes than you have in 5 years. See? This is exactly the kind of confused thinking that worries me. Eleanor looked at her son as if seeing him for the first time. When had Richard become so calculating? When had he lost the ability to see goodness in the world? I want you to stop seeing that boy, Richard said, standing up. Excuse me? It's a simple request, Mom. Think of our family, your reputation. Our family? Richard, when was the last time you cared about me as a person, not a bank account? That's not fair. Isn't it fair? Do you know the last time someone truly worried about me? It was when a 15-year-old boy risked his own life to save me from a frozen lake. Richard shook his head, as if Eleanor were a stubborn child. Fine, Mom. But when that boy starts asking for money, don't say I didn't warn you. After Richard left, Eleanor stood alone in the oppressive silence of her mansion. She looked around the room, decorated with expensive furniture and valuable artwork, but everything felt cold and lifeless. She thought of Tommy under the bridge, warming Buddy with his own body, and felt a pang of envy. The next morning, Eleanor woke up determined not to let her son's words affect her new friendship. She packed an even bigger backpack, with more food and a special blanket she had bought for Buddy. But when she arrived at the park, she found only an empty spot. There was no sign of Tommy or Buddy. Eleanor spent the entire day searching for them. She asked the few homeless people she encountered, but no one knew where they were. An older man selling popcorn in the park said he had seen some men in suits talking to the boy the day before. Eleanor's heart raced. Had Richard done something? She rushed home and confronted her son, who denied any involvement. But Eleanor noticed a suspicious glint in his eyes. If you did anything to that boy, Mum, I didn't do a thing. But maybe other people noticed the situation was becoming inappropriate. What other people? People who care about you. Eleanor felt a rage she hadn't felt in years. Richard, if I find out you interfered in my life like this, you'll regret it. Is that a threat, Mom? It's a promise. That night, Eleanor couldn't eat or sleep. She kept thinking about Tommy and Buddy, worried about where they were, if they had food, if Buddy was taking his medicine. For the first time in a long while, Eleanor realized she had found a purpose. Taking care of Tommy and Buddy had given meaning to her days in a way that managing companies or attending social events never had. The next day, she hired a private investigator. I want you to find a boy named Tommy. About 15, lives on the streets with a dog named Buddy. The investigator, Michael Peterson, jotted down the details. Do you have any idea where he might be? I suspect someone in my family may have interfered. I want to know exactly what happened. Michael had worked for wealthy families before and recognized the determination in Eleanor's voice. I'll start the investigation today. While waiting for news from the investigator, Eleanor couldn't focus on anything else. Her business meetings felt hollow and irrelevant. What did distributing profits to shareholders matter when a boy somewhere needed help? 3 days later, Michael called. Mrs. Sullivan, I have information about the boy. Where is he? It's complicated. He was taken by Child Protective Services. He's in a shelter in Boulder. Eleanor felt her world collapse. How did this happen? It seems someone made an anonymous report about a child living on the streets in unsuitable conditions. Anonymous report, Eleanor repeated, feeling the anger swell inside her. But there's more, Mrs. Sullivan. The boy ran away from the shelter the first night. No one knows where he is now. Eleanor hung up and immediately called Richard. You filed a report against Tommy, she said. It wasn't a question. Mom, Did you or didn't you? A long silence. I did what was necessary to protect you. To protect me? Richard, you ruined a child's life to protect me. Mom, that boy belongs in a shelter, not on the streets. He belongs where he feels safe. And now he's running away, probably hungry and cold because you decided to interfere in a situation that was none of your business. I'm your son. Everything that concerns you concerns me. No, Richard, you're my son, but that doesn't give you the right to control my life. Eleanor hung up the phone without waiting for a response. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Eleanor spent the following days in a frantic search. She hired 3 different detectives, put up discreet posters around the area, and even offered a reward for information about Tommy and Buddy. It was during this search that she found something that changed everything. Returning to the spot where Tommy usually stayed, Eleanor found a wet notebook under the bridge. The pages were stained but still legible. It was a diary. Eleanor hesitated before opening it. Would it be right to read the boy's private thoughts? But her concern for him outweighed her doubts. The first pages contained simple drawings and words written in a child's handwriting. But as the pages went on, Eleanor realized this wasn't an ordinary diary. June 15th. The lady with white hair passed by again today. She always walks alone and looks very sad. Buddy barked at her, but she didn't even look. June 22nd. The sad lady came back. Today, she stood by the lake for a long time. I was worried she might do something foolish. I'll keep an eye on her. June 28th. The lady seems sadder every day. Today she was crying by the lake. Buddy wanted to comfort her, but I held him back. I can't let her see me, but I'm worried. Eleanor felt tears streaming down her face. Tommy had been watching her, worried about her long before the accident at the lake. June 30th. Today I got up really early to keep an eye on the lady. I have a bad feeling. She reminds me of my grandma when she was really sad before she left. I can't let anything happen to her. July 1st. I did it. I saved the lady from the lake. She's really kind, not at all what I imagined. Buddy likes her too. She has sad eyes, but a good heart. I hope she's happier now. Eleanor was sobbing by the time she finished reading. Tommy hadn't saved her by chance. He had been protecting her for weeks, afraid she might do something drastic. The boy had seen in Eleanor the same sadness he'd recognized in his grandmother, and he'd decided to protect her, even though she was just a stranger to him. The last pages of the diary were even more touching. July 3rd. Mrs. Eleanor came back. She brought medicine for Buddy. No one's ever cared about him like that. She's special. July 5th. I talked a lot with Mrs. Eleanor today. She's smart and funny. Buddy loves her. I really like her too. It's like Grandma sent her to us. July 7th. Mrs. Eleanor seems happier when she's with us. I'm happy too. It's been a long time since I've felt this way. Maybe we can be a real family. Eleanor closed the notebook, trembling with emotion. Tommy had found in her not just someone to help, but a family. And she had felt the same. Now, more than ever, she needed to find him. Eleanor called Michael, the detective. Did you find anything new? Actually, yes, Mrs. Eleanor. I managed to track the boy's whereabouts. Where is he? He was spotted in a small town near Leadville. Seems he's hiding in an abandoned property with the dog. An abandoned property? He could be cold, hungry. Mrs. Eleanor, there's something you should know before going after him. What? The boy doesn't want to be found. He told people in the area he doesn't want to go back to the city because he caused trouble for a lady who was important to him. Eleanor felt her chest tighten. Does he think he caused problems for me? It seems so. He blames himself for what happened. Michael, do you have the exact address? I do, but no buts. Send me the address. I'm going to get him now. Mrs. Sullivan, maybe it would be better. Michael, I'm paying you to find the boy, not to give me advice on how to handle him. That same afternoon, Eleanor got in her car and drove to Leadville. The abandoned property was down a dirt road, surrounded by pine trees and open fields. Eleanor parked at a safe distance and walked to the old house. It was a sad place with broken windows and weeds growing all around. "Tommy," she called out loudly. Silence. "Tommy, I know you're here. It's me, Eleanor." A noise came from the back of the house. Eleanor walked slowly, not wanting to startle the boy. "Tommy, please, we need to talk." That was when she heard Buddy's weak bark. She followed the sound and found a small makeshift shelter at the back of the property. It was almost like a hut made of old wood and tarp. "Tommy? Mrs. Sullivan?" The boy's voice came from inside the shelter, surprised and scared. "Can I come in?" A long pause. "You shouldn't be here." "But I am, and I'm not leaving until we talk." Another pause. Finally, Tommy opened the makeshift door of the shelter. Eleanor was shocked by what she saw. The boy was even thinner, wearing dirty clothes with deep shadows under his eyes. Buddy was by his side, visibly weak. "My God, Tommy, what have you been eating?" "We manage," he said, avoiding her gaze. "What do you mean, manage? You're starving." "I don't want to talk about it." Eleanor knelt to meet the boy at eye level. "Tommy, why did you run away from the shelter?" "Because that wasn't a place for us." "And this is?" Tommy finally looked at her, and Eleanor saw tears in his eyes. "At least here I'm not causing trouble for anyone." "What trouble do you think you caused?" "You know what. Because of me, your kids got mad at you. Because of me, you're dealing with bad situations." Eleanor felt her heart break. "Tommy, you misread the situation." "What do you mean?" "You didn't cause any trouble. You brought light into my life." Tommy shook his head. "But your son said—" "My son said what?" "He came to talk to me in the park, said I was messing up your life, that people like me only cause headaches for people like you." A dull anger grew in Eleanor's chest. "And you believed him?" "He's your son. He must know what's best for you." "Tommy, can I tell you a secret?" The boy nodded. "My son doesn't care about me. He cares about the inheritance he'll get when I'm gone." "You can't say that about your own son." "Yes, I can, because it's true. Tommy, for years, my kids only show up when they need something. You, in just a few days, showed me more kindness than they have in years." "But, no buts. You want to know why I started going to that park every day? Because that's where I found you and Buddy. You two were the best part of my day." Tommy wiped his nose with his sleeve. "Really? Really? And you know what else? Because you reminded me there's still goodness in this world. You saved me, not just from the lake, but from loneliness." Eleanor held out her hand to Tommy. "Come with me, you and Buddy. Let's go home." "Mrs. Sullivan, I don't know if—" I know you're scared, that you've been hurt before trusting adults, but I promise I'll take care of both of you." Tommy looked at Buddy, who seemed weaker by the minute. "What if your kids get mad again?" "Then they'll have to learn to deal with it, because you and Buddy are my priority now." "You're sure?" "I am. More sure than I've been about anything in my life." Tommy hesitated for another moment, then nodded. "All right. But if there's any trouble, I'm leaving." "There won't be any trouble, and even if there is, we'll figure it out together." Eleanor helped Tommy gather the few things he had, carefully picked up Buddy, and the three of them headed to the car. During the drive back to Aspen, Tommy stayed quiet, staring out the window. Eleanor respected his silence, understanding how hard it must be to trust again. "Mrs. Sullivan?" Tommy said as they neared town. "Yes? Thank you for coming to get me. Thank you for letting me." When they arrived at the mansion, Eleanor took Tommy straight to the guest room she had prepared for him. It was simple but comfortable, with a warm bed and a special little corner for Buddy. "You did all this for me?" Tommy asked, looking around wide-eyed. "For both of you," Eleanor corrected. Tommy sat on the edge of the bed as if he couldn't believe it was real. "Mrs. Sullivan, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you doing this? Why do you care so much about us?" Eleanor sat beside him. "Because you've reminded me of something I'd forgotten." "What?" "How good it feels to have a real family." That night, for the first time in months, Eleanor slept deeply. Knowing Tommy and Buddy were safe and warm in the next room brought her a peace she hadn't felt in a long time, but the peace didn't last. The next morning, Eleanor was woken by the sound of raised voices coming from the living room. She quickly threw on her robe and hurried downstairs to find Richard and Catherine, her daughter, waiting with furious expressions. "Mom, what is this madness?" Catherine said the moment Eleanor appeared. "Good morning to you too, Catherine." "This isn't the time for sarcasm. We were told you brought that boy into the house." "Told by whom?" "By Margaret," Richard said, referring to the housekeeper. "She called worried because she found an unknown minor in the guest room." Eleanor sighed. She'd forgotten to tell the staff about Tommy. "Tommy isn't an unknown minor. He's a friend going through a hard time." "A friend?" Catherine repeated, incredulous. "Mum, you don't even know this boy. He could be dangerous." "Dangerous? Catherine, Tommy saved me from a frozen lake. If anyone here is dangerous, it certainly isn't him." "Mom, you can't just bring a homeless kid into the house," Richard exploded. "Think about safety, about your reputation." "My reputation?" "Richard, my reputation was built on treating people with respect and dignity. That's exactly what I'm doing." "But what if he steals something? What if he brings other homeless kids here?" Catherine pressed. "Have you two listened to yourselves? You're judging a child you've never bothered to know." "A child who lives on the streets, Mom," Richard said. "People like that learn to survive by any means. And people like you learn to exploit any situation for their own benefit," Eleanor shot back, losing patience. The silence that followed was tense. Richard and Catherine exchanged glances, as if silently communicating. "Mom," Catherine said, softening her tone, "we know you've been struggling since Dad passed. It's natural you'd try to fill the void he left. Don't you dare use your father's memory to manipulate this situation." "We're not manipulating, we're worried," Richard said. "Maybe it's time you talk to someone. A professional." "A professional?" "A psychiatrist, Mom. Someone who can help you process this grief in a healthier way." Eleanor looked at her two children as if seeing them for the first time. "Are you suggesting I need psychiatric help because I decided to help a child?" "We're suggesting you need help because you're making impulsive decisions that could harm you," said Catherine. "Harm me how?" "Financially, socially," began Richard. "Ah, now we get to what really matters to you," interrupted Eleanor. "The money. It's not just about money, Mom." "No? Then why was the first thing you mentioned the risks to my assets?" Before anyone could respond, Tommy appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing the clean clothes Eleanor had set out for him. He descended slowly, clearly intimidated by the argument. "Mrs. Sullivan, is everything okay?" he asked softly. "Yes, dear. Come down and meet my children." Richard and Catherine looked at Tommy with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "Tommy, these are Richard and Catherine," said Eleanor as the boy entered the room. "Good morning," Tommy said politely, but Eleanor noticed he kept a safe distance. "So you're the famous Tommy," said Richard, eyeing the boy up and down. I just wanted to thank you for letting me stay here," said Tommy. "I know it must be strange for you." The boy's polite and humble response seemed to soften the siblings' hostility slightly. "Where did you live before?" asked Catherine. "On the streets. Buddy and I managed." "And your parents?" pressed Richard. Eleanor saw Tommy's expression close off. "I don't have parents anymore." "What do you mean you don't?" Richard pushed. "Richard, that's enough," Eleanor intervened. "Mum, these are normal questions. If he's staying in our house, we have a right to know who he is." "It's not your house," Eleanor said firmly. "It's my house, and Tommy doesn't owe anyone an explanation." "It's okay, Mrs. Sullivan," said Tommy. "I can answer." He looked at Richard and Catherine with a courage that impressed Eleanor. "My parents died when I was 8. I lived with my grandma, but she passed 2 years ago. Then I went to a shelter, but it wasn't a good place. So I ran away, and since then I've been on the streets with Buddy." "And you're sure there are no other relatives?" asked Catherine. "I'm sure. It's just me and Buddy." Eleanor noticed that despite the obvious sadness in Tommy's story, he spoke with a dignity that contrasted with her children's interrogative tone. "See," said Eleanor, "now you know his story. Any objections to helping an orphaned child?" Richard and Catherine were momentarily speechless. "It's not about helping," Richard finally said. "It's about how to help in the most appropriate way." "Which would be?" "There are specialized institutions, Mum. Places equipped to handle cases like his." "Cases like mine," repeated Tommy, and Eleanor saw the hurt in his eyes. "It's nothing personal," Catherine said quickly. "It's just that there are trained professionals." "And I'm not one," interrupted Eleanor. "I raised 2 children, ran a business for 40 years, and I'm not capable of caring for a child." "Mom, that's not it." "That's exactly it. You think I'm incapable of making my own decisions." Tommy watched the argument with obvious discomfort. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said quietly, "maybe they're right. Maybe I should—" "No," Eleanor said firmly. "You're not going anywhere." She turned to Richard and Catherine. "And the 2 of you will learn to respect my decisions, or you'll have to leave my home." "Mom," exclaimed Catherine, "you're choosing a stranger over your own children." "I'm choosing someone who shows me love and respect over those who only show interest in my money." The accusation hit them like a slap. "How can you say that?" said Richard, genuinely hurt. "Because it's the truth. When was the last time you visited me without wanting something? When was the last time you cared about my happiness instead of my bank account?" Eleanor saw her words had hit their mark. Richard and Catherine exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. "Tommy," Eleanor said, "why don't you go check on Buddy? You can give him his morning medicine." "Okay," Tommy replied, clearly relieved to leave the tense room. Once they were alone, Eleanor sat down and faced her 2 children. "Now, let's talk seriously." "Mom, no interruptions. You're going to listen to me." Richard and Catherine sat, visibly uncomfortable. "It's been 2 years since your father passed. In all that time, how often did you call just to ask how I was doing?" Silence. "How many times did you come here without needing a favor or business advice?" More silence. "How many times did you notice I was sad, lonely, needing company?" "Mom, Catherine began. "How many?" Eleanor insisted. "We thought you preferred being alone," Richard said quietly. "You thought that? Or was it just easier for you to believe it?" Eleanor sighed, feeling the weight of years of shallow relationships with her children. "Do you know the first sign someone cared about me after your father died? When a 15-year-old boy risked his life to save me from a frozen lake? Mom, let me finish. Do you know the first sign someone saw me as a person, not just a wealthy businesswoman? When that same boy refused my offer of money and only asked for medicine for his sick dog." Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes. "Do you know the last time I felt useful, needed, loved? When I started taking care of Tommy and Buddy." "Mom, we love you," Catherine said, her own eyes filling with tears. "I know you do, but you don't show it. You don't spend time with me. You don't know me anymore." Eleanor wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Tommy has known me for 2 weeks and already sees things about me you haven't noticed in 2 years." "What things?" Richard asked. "That I was sad, that I was alone, that I needed a purpose." Eleanor stood and walked to the window. "He gave me back my will to live. And now you want me to give that up because you think it's inappropriate?" "We don't want you to give up your will to live," Catherine said. "We just want you to find safer ways to find purpose." "Safer for whom? For me or for your inheritance?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Richard and Catherine stayed silent. "Look," Eleanor finally said, "I understand your concerns. I really do. But you need to understand something. Tommy isn't a threat. He's a blessing." "How can you be so sure?" Richard asked. "Because I read his journal." Eleanor told them about the notebook she'd found, how Tommy had been watching her for weeks, worried about her sadness. "He saved me not by accident, but because he'd been looking out for me long before I knew it." When she finished, Richard and Catherine looked visibly shaken. "Why would he do that?" Catherine asked softly. "Because he has a good heart. Because he knows what suffering is and doesn't want others to go through it." Eleanor sat back down. "I know it's hard for you to understand. You've always had everything, never faced hardship, never been rejected. But there are people in this world who, even with little, can give so much. And you think he expects nothing in return? Richard asked. I know he doesn't, because I've offered, and he always refuses. Eleanor looked at her children with a mix of love and disappointment. I'll make you an offer, she said. What kind of offer? You spend a week getting to know Tommy, really get to know him, then tell me if you still think he's any kind of danger. And if after a week we still think it's a bad idea, asked Catherine, then we'll talk. But it has to be a real week of getting to know him, not investigating or intimidating him. Richard and Catherine exchanged glances. All right, Richard finally said. 1 week. But on one condition, Catherine added. If we notice anything suspicious, any sign he's taking advantage of you, you promise to reconsider. And if you realize you were wrong about him, do you promise to support me? Eleanor countered. We promise, Richard said. Eleanor nodded, hoping a week would be enough for her children to see in Tommy what she had seen from the very first day. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. In the days that followed, the household dynamic changed completely. Tommy woke up early to help in the kitchen, always asking if there was anything useful he could do. He took care of Buddy with dedication, but also showed genuine interest in learning the routines of the house. Richard watched everything carefully, searching for signs the boy was faking kindness. But as the days passed, it became harder to hold on to suspicion. Mrs. Sullivan, Tommy said on the third morning, can I help in the garden? I noticed some plants need tending. You know about plants? Eleanor asked, surprised. A little. When I lived with my grandma, she had a garden. She taught me a few things. Richard, who was having coffee on the terrace, overheard. What kind of things? He asked, more out of curiosity than doubt. How to tell when a plant needs water, how to make natural fertilizer, how to prune without hurting it, Tommy replied. Natural fertilizer? My grandma used eggshells, coffee grounds, stuff like that. Said it was better than chemicals. Richard found himself intrigued despite his reservations. He'd always wanted to care for the mansion's garden, but never had time to learn. Could you teach me? He asked before he could stop himself. Of course, Tommy answered, smiling for the first time since meeting Richard. That afternoon, Richard found himself kneeling in the dirt beside Tommy, learning how to care for his mother's rose bushes. The boy explained each step patiently, and Richard realized Tommy had knowledge not from books, but from hands-on experience. Where'd you learn so much? Richard asked. On the streets you figure things out. Got to know a little of everything to survive. Must have been hard. Tommy paused and looked at Richard. It was. But it also taught me to appreciate the good things when they come. How so? Like now. Your mom gave me a roof, food, took care of Buddy. That's more than I ever dreamed of having. So I want to give back somehow. Richard felt something shift inside him. When was the last time he'd felt genuinely grateful for something his mother had done for him? Tommy, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you save my mom? I mean, the real reason. Tommy thought for a moment. Because she reminded me of my grandma in her last days before she passed. My grandma got real sad when she found out she was sick. She'd go to the backyard and just stare at the sky, you know, like she wanted to leave. And my mom was doing that? Sort of. She'd go to the park and stare at Mirror Lake with this deep sadness. I got worried she might do something foolish. Richard swallowed hard. Do you think she was thinking about... I don't know. But I couldn't leave her alone like that. When my grandma died, I promised myself that if I ever saw someone with that kind of sadness again, I'd try to help. Richard looked at the boy with new eyes. Tommy wasn't some opportunist trying to take advantage of a wealthy, elderly woman. He was a child who had lost everything and still found the strength to care for others. Your grandma would be proud of you, said Richard. You think? Asked Tommy, his eyes shining. I'm sure of it. That night, when Eleanor asked how his day had been, Richard surprised himself. Tommy taught me a lot about gardening. He's a really smart kid. He is, isn't he? Said Eleanor, smiling. Mum, can I ask you something? Of course. Were you really thinking about, you know, at the lake? Eleanor hesitated. It was the first time one of her children had asked so directly about her emotional state. I was feeling very lost, she admitted. Very alone. I don't know if I would have done something drastic, but I wasn't in a good place mentally. Why didn't you ever tell us? When would you have given me the chance? When did you ask how I was feeling instead of how the business was doing? The question stung, but Richard knew his mother was right. I'm sorry, Mom. No need to apologize. You just need to understand why Tommy is so important to me. He brought me back to life. Richard nodded, finally beginning to understand. Catherine took longer to accept Tommy. She always arrived late in the day, tired from work, and found the boy helping her mother with some task. At first she saw it as manipulation, but on the fourth day something changed. Catherine had come home especially stressed. Office problems, bad traffic, and on top of that she'd fought with her boyfriend. She walked in a bad mood, ready to find fault in whatever Tommy was doing. Instead, she found her mother and the boy in the living room, Eleanor playing the piano while Tommy sat on the floor listening, petting Buddy. "What song is that?" asked Catherine, despite her mood. "Chopin," answered Eleanor. "It's been a while since I played." "Why did you stop?" "I lost the desire after your father died. Playing reminded me of him." "And now?" Eleanor looked at Tommy fondly. "Tommy asked me to play. He said music is good for the heart." Catherine looked at the boy, who seemed genuinely enchanted by the music. "Do you like classical music?" she asked. "I like all kinds of music, but this is really beautiful. Mrs. Eleanor plays like an angel." The simplicity of his answer and the sparkle in his eyes disarmed Catherine. "Do you play anything?" "No, I never had the chance to learn." "Would you like to?" Tommy glanced at Eleanor as if asking permission. "I'd love to," he said. "Mom, could you teach him?" Eleanor smiled. "It would be my pleasure." That night, Catherine stayed for dinner for the first time in months. During the meal, she watched how Tommy treated her mother, with respect, affection, and a genuine attentiveness that made her feel ashamed. "Tommy," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "What do you want to be when you grow up?" The boy thought for a moment. "I want a little house with a yard where Buddy can play. And I want to help other kids who live on the streets, like I did." "How would you help?" "I don't know yet. Maybe open a place where they can stay, where no one hurts them, where they can learn things." "And you don't want to be rich? Have expensive things?" Tommy shook his head. "I don't need much to be happy. Just people who care about me and who I can take care of too." Catherine looked at her mother and saw tears in her eyes. "What about you, Catherine?" asked Tommy. "What do you like to do?" The simple question caught Catherine off guard. How long had it been since someone asked about what she liked, not about what she did to make money? I used to draw," she admitted. "When I was little, I dreamed of being an artist." "Why did you stop?" "Because it doesn't pay, because it's not practical." "But did it make you happy?" "It did." "Then maybe you should start drawing again. Money is important, but so is happiness." The boy's simple wisdom left Catherine thoughtful. When had she stopped doing things that made her happy? After dinner, when Tommy went upstairs to give Buddy his nighttime medicine, Catherine turned to her mother. "He's special, isn't he?" "He is," agreed Eleanor. "Mom, I think I was wrong about him." "What changed your mind?" "The way he looks at you, the way he talks about you. There's no ulterior motive, no calculation, just love." Eleanor nodded. "And the way you've changed since he arrived," Catherine continued. "You seem alive again." "I feel alive again." "I'm sorry for doubting you. You were protecting your mother. There's nothing wrong with questioning. The problem is not accepting the answers when they're given." Catherine smiled. "Can I be part of this? Of your life with Tommy?" "Of course. That's all I've ever wanted, to have my children back in my life." By the end of the week, Richard and Catherine asked to speak with Eleanor alone. "Mum," Richard said, "we want to apologize." "For what?" "For everything. For not noticing your sadness. For judging Tommy before getting to know him. For thinking about money first instead of you. And most of all," Catherine added, for almost missing the chance to know someone who brought our mother back to us." Eleanor felt her eyes fill with tears. "Do you understand now why he's important?" "We do," Richard said, "and we want to support you in whatever you decide to do for him." "Even if it means changes to the inheritance?" Eleanor asked. Richard and Catherine exchanged glances. "Mum," Catherine said, "we realized something this week. The inheritance means nothing if we don't have you in our lives, and Tommy brought you back." "So if he makes you happy," Richard finished, "he makes us happy too." Eleanor hugged both her children, feeling she finally had her family whole again, but the happiness didn't last long. 2 days later, a man knocked on the mansion's door. He was a social worker. "Mrs. Eleanor Sullivan?" asked the man, a thin gentleman in his 50s. "Yes." "My name is Walter Brown. I'm a social worker. I'm here regarding a complaint about an underage minor allegedly living here without proper documentation." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "A complaint? We received information that you're sheltering a 15-year-old boy without following the necessary legal protocols." "What protocols?" "To take in a minor in a vulnerable situation, you must go through a temporary guardianship approval process. Have you done that?" "I didn't know it was required," Eleanor admitted. "May I speak with the boy?" Eleanor had no choice but to call Tommy. The boy came downstairs, visibly nervous. "Are you Thomas Wilson Smith?" the social worker asked. "I am," Tommy answered softly. "Are you here of your own free will?" "Yes." "And are you being treated well?" "Very well." Walter looked around the mansion, jotting notes on his clipboard. "Mrs. Sullivan, your intentions may be good, but unfortunately the situation is irregular. The boy needs to be placed in a proper facility while you secure the necessary paperwork." "No," Tommy exclaimed. "Please, I don't want to go back to the shelter." "It's temporary," Walter said firmly, "just until we sort this out." "How long will that take?" asked Eleanor. "It might take a few weeks, maybe months. It depends on several factors." Eleanor saw the despair in Tommy's eyes and felt her heart break. "Can't there be an exception? The boy is clearly happy here." "I'm afraid not. The rules exist to protect minors." "Protect me from what?" Tommy burst out. "Mrs. Sullivan saved me. She gave me a family." "I understand your emotional bond," said Walter, "but procedures exist for a reason." Eleanor realized there was no arguing with bureaucracy. "Can Tommy at least stay until tomorrow, to say goodbye?" Walter hesitated. "Until tomorrow morning, but I need to come back at 10 to pick him up." After the social worker left, Eleanor hugged Tommy as he cried. "Everything will be fine," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "What if it's not? What if they don't let me come back?" "They will, I promise." "Mrs. Sullivan, what if it's like last time? What if someone's mean to me there?" Eleanor felt a dull anger. Who had made the complaint? Who was determined to tear her family apart? "Richard," she called. When her son appeared, Eleanor explained the situation. "Someone filed a complaint. I want to know who it was." "Mum, it could have been anyone, a neighbor, an employee, or a relative looking to cause trouble," said Eleanor, staring intently at her son. "Mum, I swear it wasn't me. And it wasn't Catherine either." Eleanor saw sincerity in Richard's eyes and believed him. Then who? That night, no one in the house could sleep. Tommy was terrified at the thought of going back to a shelter, and Eleanor was desperate to find a legal solution. Early the next morning, she called her lawyer. "Doctor Williams, I need urgent help." "What happened, Mrs. Sullivan?" Eleanor explained the whole situation. "Is there any way to speed up this custody process?" "It's complicated, Mrs. Sullivan. There's a lot of bureaucracy. Michael, you've known me for 20 years. You know the kind of person I am. Is it really necessary for a child to suffer because of paperwork?" "It's not just paperwork, Mrs. Sullivan. The system exists to protect..." "Protect from what?" "From a 67-year-old woman who wants to give love and care to an orphaned child." The lawyer sighed. "Let me see what I can do. I'll try to speak with the judge, explain the situation." "Thank you." At exactly 10 o'clock, Walter returned. Tommy had a small backpack holding Buddy in his arms. "What about the dog?" asked Walter. "He's coming with me," Tommy said firmly. I'm not sure that's possible. Then I'm not going, Tommy declared. Eleanor stepped in. Walter, can I keep the dog and bring him to visit Tommy? That would be possible, agreed the social worker. Tommy handed Buddy to Eleanor with tears in his eyes. Take good care of him for me. Of course. And you take care of yourself. I'll get you out of there as soon as I can. Promise? I promise. Eleanor watched the car drive away with Tommy and felt as if she were losing a child. The days that followed were the hardest Eleanor had faced since her husband's death. Buddy stayed in Tommy's room, refusing to eat properly. Richard and Catherine took turns keeping their mother company, as she barely left her room. Mum, you need to eat, said Catherine on the third day. I'm not hungry. Tommy wouldn't want to see you like this. Tommy isn't here to see. But he'll be back. Dr. Williams said the process is moving forward. Eleanor looked at her daughter with tired eyes. What if it doesn't work? What if they make up some reason not to grant me custody? That won't happen. There's no way to be sure. Way to. Catherine sat on the edge of the bed. Mom, can I confess something? What? When you brought Tommy home, I was jealous. Jealous? You were giving him the attention and affection I always wanted from you. And I realized that instead of fighting for that attention, I should have learned from him. What do you mean? Tommy won your love by being himself. Genuine, caring, grateful. I spent my life trying to impress you with professional achievements, as if love was something you earned through performance. Eleanor looked at her daughter with renewed interest. And what did you learn? That love isn't earned. It's given and received. And Tommy taught me how to do that. Eleanor smiled for the first time in days. He's a good teacher, isn't he? He is. And you know what? I started drawing again. Really? Last night. I drew you and Tommy playing the piano. It's been years since I felt so happy doing something. Eleanor sat on the bed. Can I see? Catherine grabbed a sketchbook and showed her mother. It was a simple drawing, but full of life and emotion. It's beautiful, said Eleanor, tears in her eyes. I want to give it to Tommy when he comes back. He'll love it. That afternoon, Eleanor forced herself out of bed. She couldn't give up. Tommy needed her strong. She called Dr. Williams. Any news? Actually, yes. I secured a hearing with the judge for tomorrow. You can present your case in person. What do I need to do? Just be honest about your intentions and show you're capable of caring for the boy. Can I bring Richard and Catherine as witnesses? That would be great. The next day, Eleanor dressed in her best suit and went to the courthouse with both children. The judge, Judge William Chambers, was a serious-looking man in his 50s with kind eyes. Mrs. Sullivan, he said, I understand you wish to obtain custody of Thomas Wilson Smith. Yes, Your Honor. Why do you want to adopt the boy? Eleanor took a deep breath. Because he saved me, not just from a frozen lake, but from loneliness, depression, from feeling like my life had no purpose. And you believe you can provide a suitable home for him? I do. I have the financial means, a spacious house, and most importantly, love to give. Do you have experience raising children? I raised 2, said Eleanor, gesturing to Richard and Catherine, and from what I see, I didn't do too badly. The judge smiled slightly. Do your children support this decision? Richard stepped forward. We fully support it, Your Honor. Tommy isn't just a boy our mother wants to help. He's become part of our family. How so? He brought our mother back to us, Catherine explained. He taught us how to show real love, showed us family isn't about blood, it's about care. The judge made some notes. Mrs. Sullivan, do you understand adopting a teenager with a history of living on the streets may present challenges? I do. But I also understand leaving a good, kind-hearted boy in the system may present even greater challenges for him and for society. Do you have specific plans for his future? I want him to study, develop his talents, become the good man he's already becoming. And most of all, I want him to be happy. The judge was silent for a moment, reviewing the documents. I'll grant temporary custody, he finally said. Eleanor's heart raced. But, the judge continued, with conditions. What conditions? Psychological counseling for both of you, periodic social worker reports, and the boy must be enrolled in school immediately. I agree to everything, Eleanor said quickly. Very well. The paperwork will be processed today. You can pick up Thomas tomorrow morning. Eleanor could barely hold back tears of joy. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you so much. As they left the courthouse, Eleanor hugged Richard and Catherine. We did it. You did it, Mom, Richard corrected. You fought for him like a real mother would. Now he'll really be our brother, Catherine said, smiling. That night, Eleanor called the shelter and asked to speak to Tommy. Mrs. Sullivan, the boy's voice sounded anxious. Tommy, my son, I'm coming to get you tomorrow. Silence. Then sobs. Really? Really, you're coming home? You didn't give up on me. I'll never give up on you. You're my son now. Officially. What about Buddy? He's here waiting for you. He's barely eaten, missing you so much. Mrs. Sullivan, yes, I love you. It was the first time Tommy had ever said those words, and Eleanor felt like her heart might burst with happiness. I love you too, my son. So much. The next morning, Eleanor arrived at the shelter with Richard, Catherine, and Buddy. When Tommy saw the dog, he ran and knelt to hug him. Hey, Buddy, I missed you so much. Buddy licked the boy's face as if making sure he was real. Ready to go home? Eleanor asked. More than ready, Tommy replied, standing up and hugging her. On the way back, Catherine handed Tommy a drawing. I made this for you. Tommy looked at it carefully, touching the paper as if it was something precious. It's so beautiful, you playing the piano. I'll keep it forever. I started drawing again because of you, Catherine said. Because of me. You reminded me that we should do things that make us happy. And drawing makes you happy? Very much. Then you should keep drawing, always. When they arrived at the mansion, Eleanor had a surprise waiting. She had turned the guest room into a real bedroom for Tommy, with a desk for studying, a bookshelf, and a special corner for Buddy. This room is really mine, Tommy asked, looking around in awe. Yours forever, Eleanor replied. Mrs. Sullivan, Mom, can I ask you something? It was the first time Tommy had called her Mom, and Eleanor felt her eyes fill with tears. Of course, my son. Can I still help with the garden and around the house? I don't want to just sit around. Of course. This is your home too. Everyone here helps. And can I learn to play the piano? I'd love to teach you. That evening, the family gathered for dinner. Eleanor looked around the table, Richard, Catherine, and now Tommy, and realized she finally had what she'd always wanted, a family bound by love. Can I say something? Tommy asked. Of course, they all replied at once. Thank you so much for accepting me. I never thought I'd have a family again. Thank you, Richard said, for teaching us what a real family is. What do you mean? You showed us that family isn't about being right or wrong, Catherine explained. It's about being together. Eleanor smiled, watching her children, all of them talking and laughing together. But the story had one more twist. 2 months later, when Tommy was already enrolled in school and adjusting well to his new life, Eleanor got an unexpected call. Mrs. Sullivan, this is Dr. Margaret, the psychologist from the shelter where Tommy stayed. Hello, doctor. Is something wrong? Actually, an interesting discovery. I've been reviewing Tommy's complete records, and I found something that might interest you. What is it? Tommy has exceptional musical talent. He was tested when he arrived at the shelter, and the results were surprising. How so? He has perfect pitch and an intuitive understanding of harmony that's very rare, even without any formal music lessons. Eleanor was stunned. But he never mentioned it. Probably because he never had the chance to develop it. But with the piano lessons you've been giving him, I bet he's progressing quickly. It was true. Tommy was learning piano at a pace that even impressed Eleanor, who had years of classical training. Doctor, what do you suggest? They should look for a specialized teacher. Tommy could have a future as a professional musician if he wants. After hanging up, Eleanor kept thinking, would Tommy actually want to pursue a music career? Was that what he truly wanted? That evening, during the piano lesson, Eleanor decided to talk to him. Tommy, how do you feel when you play the piano? It's the most amazing thing in the world, he replied, not taking his eyes off the keys. When I play, it's like I'm having a conversation with the music. Would you like to take lessons with a better teacher than me? Tommy stopped playing and looked at her, startled. You don't want to teach me anymore. I'll always want to, but a specialized teacher could show you things I don't know. What if I don't want to? Then you don't have to, but maybe you should at least give it a try. Tommy thought for a moment. Can I still play with you too? Always. Then it's okay, but only if it's not too expensive. I don't want you spending too much money on me. Eleanor smiled. Even after 2 months in a wealthy family, Tommy still worried about money being spent on him. My dear, I've had money saved for years without knowing how to spend it in a way that would make me happy. Investing in your talent is the best thing I can imagine. A week later, Eleanor hired Professor Robert Matthews, one of the best piano teachers in Denver. At the first lesson, the professor was astonished. Mrs. Sullivan, where did this boy learn to play like this? With me over the last 2 months. Impossible. He plays as if he's had years of training. Is he naturally gifted? Naturally gifted. Mrs. Sullivan, this boy is a prodigy. Over the following weeks, Professor Matthews worked intensively with Tommy. His progress was remarkable day by day. He's ready to perform in public, the professor said after a month of lessons. What do you mean? There's a young talents recital at the conservatory. Tommy should participate. What if he gets nervous? Let him decide. When Eleanor told Tommy about the opportunity, he was both excited and scared. Will a lot of people be watching? A few, but nothing you can't handle. Will you be there? I wouldn't miss it for the world. What about Richard and Catherine? If you want, they'll be there too. I do. I want the whole family there. The day of the recital arrived, and Tommy was visibly nervous. What if I forget the music? What if I play it wrong? He asked as Eleanor straightened his tie. If that happens, you stop, take a breath, and start again. Every musician has been through it. Have you? Many times. And you know what I've learned? People root for you. They want you to do well. When they arrived at the conservatory, Eleanor, Richard, Catherine, and even Buddy, whom Eleanor had sneaked in inside a bag, sat in the front row. Tommy walked onto the stage wearing the suit Eleanor had bought for him. He sat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and looked at his family. Eleanor waved and smiled, giving him encouragement. Tommy began to play. The music flowing from the piano was Chopin, the same piece Eleanor had played the day Catherine found them in the room. But under Tommy's fingers, the music took on a new emotion, a depth that came from someone who had known both hardship and joy. The auditorium fell into absolute silence. Even the youngest children stopped fidgeting. When Tommy finished, there was a moment of quiet before applause erupted. The boy stood, bowed, and looked straight at Eleanor. She was crying with pride. After the recital, many people came to congratulate Tommy. "Young man, you have extraordinary talent," said an elegant lady. "How long have you been studying?" asked a teacher. 3 months, Tommy answered shyly. 3 months? The expressions of astonishment were universal. Eleanor approached and placed her hand on Tommy's shoulder. "This is my son," she said proudly. "Tommy." From that day on, opportunities began to appear. Invitations to perform at events, scholarship offers, teachers wanting to work with him. But what impressed Eleanor the most was how Tommy handled all the attention, with humility and gratitude. "Mom," he said one evening after yet another invitation to perform, "this is all happening so fast. Are you feeling pressured?" "A little. What if I'm not as good as people think?" Eleanor sat beside him at the piano. "Tommy, do you remember why you started playing?" "Because you were sad, and I wanted you to play again." "Exactly. You play out of love, not obligation. As long as you keep that in your heart, you'll always be good enough." "What if I want to keep studying music? Then we'll find the best music school in the country." "What if I don't? Then we'll find something else that makes you happy." You wouldn't be disappointed? Tommy, listen carefully. I don't care if you become a famous musician or decide to grow potatoes. I just want you to be happy and to be a good person. And you already are a good person. Tommy hugged Eleanor. Thank you for always supporting me. That's what mothers do, my son. 6 months after the recital, the family had settled into a new rhythm. Tommy continued studying music, but was also doing well in regular school. Richard had discovered a passion for gardening he never knew he had, and spent afternoons working in the yard with Tommy. Catherine had started drawing again and was even considering an exhibition. And Eleanor, she had rediscovered the joy of living. "Mom," Richard said one Sunday morning, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you regret anything that's happened since Tommy came?" Eleanor thought for a moment. "I regret not finding him sooner. I regret taking so long to realize that you two," she said, looking at Richard and Catherine, "also needed a closer family. What if none of this had happened? What if you hadn't fallen into the lake? I'd probably still be alone in a big house, and you two would still only visit when you needed something. And Tommy would still be on the streets," Catherine added. "Yes," Eleanor agreed. "Sometimes what seems like a tragedy is actually a gift." "How so?" "Falling into that lake was terrifying, but it led me to Tommy, and Tommy led me back to you, and all of us led each other to a better life." That afternoon, the family was gathered in the living room, each doing their own thing. Eleanor was reading a book, Richard was studying plants, Catherine was sketching, and Tommy was practicing piano while Buddy slept at his feet. "Can I say something?" Tommy asked, stopping mid-song. "Of course," everyone replied. "Remember what I wrote in my journal about wanting a family?" They all nodded. "I imagined a small, simple family. I never thought I'd get one as amazing as this. And we never thought we'd need a 15-year-old boy to teach us how to be a family," Richard said. "You know what's funniest?" Eleanor said. "What?" "I thought I was saving Tommy, but really, he saved me. He saved all of us." "How so?" "He saved me from loneliness. He saved you too from a life without real purpose. He saved us from being people who had everything but weren't happy." Catherine looked at the sketch she was working on, the whole family together in the living room, with Buddy sleeping. "Can I read something I wrote?" she asked. "Of course." Catherine picked up a notebook. "Family isn't about sharing the same blood, but about sharing the same dreams. Family isn't about always agreeing, but about always supporting. Family isn't perfect, but it's real. And sometimes family comes from where we least expect, bringing exactly what we need most." "Did you write that?" asked Eleanor, impressed. "Tommy inspired me to write, not just draw. And he inspired me to be a better brother," said Richard. "And he inspired me to be a better mother," said Eleanor. Tommy flushed red. "You're the ones who inspired me to be a better person, to believe I deserved to be loved." "You always did," said Eleanor. "You just needed to find the right people to show you. And now you have," said Richard. "We all have," corrected Catherine. "All of us found each other." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Eleanor stayed in the living room a little longer, gazing at the photos now decorating the piano, pictures of the whole family together, Tommy playing, Richard in the garden, Catherine with her drawings. A year ago, that room had been silent and empty. Now it was full of life, love, and music. Eleanor thought about everything that had happened since that icy morning by the lake. A fall that nearly cost her life had ended up saving her entire family. Sometimes, she reflected, the best gifts come wrapped in the worst moments. And sometimes, to find a family, you first have to be willing to save a stranger. Or, let a stranger save you. The end. What did you think of this story? Did Tommy and Eleanor truly deserve to find this happiness? Tell us in the comments which part touched your heart the most, and whether you believe small acts of kindness can really transform entire lives. Leave a like if the story moved you, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other soul-stirring stories.